In 1990, the members of the Havasupai tribe gave blood samples to Arizona State University researchers. They were told that it was to study diabetes, a disease devastating their community. However, years later, it was later recognized that their DNA had been used for something else entirely: schizophrenia research and migration studies, something that contradicted their own oral histories of origin. And that case ended in a $700,000 settlement, but we cannot settle broken trust. We tell you this story today because it shows something absolutely relevant to AI, status quo. What do we do when communities lose control over their own knowledge? And that is what we're talking about right now. And that's the problem that we have at the status quo in our reputation. Today, hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are Team Elevaite, and we're here to present to you Project Archive. My name is Jaden, the presenter focused on expert coordination.
I'm Xavier, recorder focused on technical implementation.
I'm Carl, the organizational lead focused on technical design.
I'm William, facilitator focused on social implementation.
I'm Robert, recorder, and I focus on contextualization and alignment. So large language models are trained upon enormous pools of data, but they don't always ask for permission. Anything that's digitalized is also likely to be consumed. That includes traditions, ceremonies, and even oral histories only meant for certain people during certain seasons. This happens because AI cannot distinguish what can be used and what must be protected. It simply grabs information, synthesizes, and extrapolates. This is useful, but AI often doesn't consider and credit the people they take information from, nor do they consider if information shouldn't be synthesized. Ultimately, this leads to hallucinations and potentially offensive outputs. For users, this can be considered a critical thinking crisis. When AI presents such information with such overwhelming confidence, what do you know what to believe? Most people don't ask themselves this, and that's exactly the problem. So we ask ourselves, instead of one AI that speaks for everyone, what if we have every single community have a voice in the system?
And thus, we introduce Archive, a digital repository and search interface built on the relationship between our AI ambassadors and librarian. You can imagine Archive like a library in which each cultural community controls its own section, able to choose what goes in and what gets shared. Submission is entirely voluntary. The knowledge stays theirs. When a user submits a search query, our librarian identifies the relevant ambassadors and routes the question to them, collecting the information they supply in response. Each ambassador is specially trained on the first-hand data its community has submitted, using leadership and moderation structures they choose themselves to ensure respect for different cultures' forms of government. Thus, when the librarian responds, it speaks from its community's own basis of knowledge, with near zero manipulation. The librarian itself uses a robust multi-objective optimization algorithm to select for the most helpful data. And finally, results come back, side by side, each perspective distinct and each source visible. Archive also employs a tag system for the data in it stores, empowering communities to designate any submission as freely shareable, prioritized for display, or restricted, kept for preservation only. With Archive, the Havasupai scenario becomes structurally impossible.
Now, running an LLM for every query takes significant computing power. Archive addresses this with a mixture of expert system, where only the most relevant ambassadors respond to the prompt rather than the entire model, which makes our system faster, cheaper, and more energy efficient using smaller community-trained models. The result is a system that can scale in breadth without scaling proportionally in power consumption. Rob Miller, director of IT at Domino High Voltage, confirmed that Archive's proposed architecture is both technically realistic and effective. This balance between AI capability and environmental impact was explored directly through our Idea Summit game. What are the costs? Challenge elementary students to step into different societal roles and manage limited energy resources while making choices around AI use and development based on each role's goals and priorities. Using surveys taken from a control group and after gameplay experience, they discovered a significant increase in students' consciousness around AI. That shift from passive user to critical participant is exactly what Archive creates at a societal scale.
Let's return to the Havasupai, because their story doesn't end with a lawsuit. After the settlement, many members refused participation in any further scientific study. That is what unaddressed knowledge misuse does. It breaks trust at the source. For Archive to succeed, communities must choose it. And our expert interviews confirmed this. The mayor of Langley Township and City, as well as Brenda Gunn of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, all emphasize that communities must control how their knowledge moves through any system. Fern Gabriel, an Algonquin Aboriginal language teacher, stressed that removing knowledge from its cultural context leads to a loss of meaning. Archive is built on 3 key principles from these conversations. Control. Communities decide what is shared and what is restricted. Accurate representation. Perspectives stay separate, so each speaking in its own voice. And mutual benefit. As communities respect Archive, as Archive respects them, and they choose to participate because the system serves them and not just the user. To progress Archive from prototype to implementation, our next steps are to formalize data agreements with 2 pilot communities, one indigenous and one municipal, to validate the governance model, while also pursuing partnerships with organizations like UNESCO and a university and library system for funding and infrastructure support. From there, Archive can expand to include additional EHREF recognized communities. The problem with current AI is that when it makes errors, users never question it. Archive makes questioning visible. When users are presented perspectives side by side, they aren't simply handed an answer, they are handed a conversation. Users must critically think and evaluate the info for themselves.
Ultimately, we're not trying to fix AI by making it smarter, we're trying to fix AI by making it accountable to the peoples whose knowledge it relies on and to the users whose understanding it shapes. Our system presents cultures exactly as they want to be presented into the world, but at the same time, equally as important, it allows the users to draw upon their own conclusions. That is the crux of critical thinking at scale, and that is Archive. Thank you.